commissioner and also Commissioner Bangs. Both of which re-elected last November, and then Commissioner Wakua was elected last November. So this is the official swearing in ceremony. Judge Bo Peterson, you've done this before, so thank you so very much for being here this evening.
You can do it. So we've got some oaths here, and since it's only two of you, I'll do it one at a time. That doesn't bother anyone. So first off, newly elected Commissioner Wakuya, if you'd raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Anthony Wakuya,
I, Anthony Wakua,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Oregon,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Oregon,
that I will support the Charter of Clatsop County,
that I will support the Charter of Clatsop County,
that I will faithfully and honorably conduct myself in the office of Clatsop County Commissioner for District 2,
and that I will faithfully and honorably conduct myself in the office of Clatsop County Commissioner for District 2,
to which I have been elected to the best of my ability.
to which I have been elected to the best of my ability.
Good. Then, if you would sign.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, yeah, wonderful. Great signature too, look at
You
that.
gotta sign the
That's
pretty one.
practice. That's just for practice. There we go. Do the same. So,
You know, I still get a thrill. This is really very cool.
I was excited. All right, and have that for you to sign.
Mhm.
And Commissioner Banks, if you raise your hand. Repeat after me. I, Courtney Banks,
I, Courtney Bangs,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Oregon,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Oregon,
that I will support the Charter of Clatsop County,
that I will support the Charter of Clatsop County,
that I will faithfully and honorably conduct myself in the office of Clatsop County Commissioner for District 4,
and that I will faithfully and honorably conduct myself in the office of Clatsop County Commissioner for District 4,
which I have been elected to the best of my ability.
to which I've been elected to the best of my ability.
It's your turn to sign.
Yay. Thank you.
Okay, so we want to get some pictures here, Judge.
Yes.
I can stick around for a little.
And then we've got family here as well, so if you'd like to come up. Get a picture with maybe the judge, the commissioner, wherever you want me to stay, and then a picture with family as well, that'd be great. You're. Yeah.
And if it's not wrong, but I prefer the better picture.
Okay, let's get the rest of the commission out.
So long. I'll move that way a little bit.
Switch one.
Okay. Forward towards me. Towards me. There you go. Yep, keep coming forward. Yep. And
It's like a basketball.
You can still your shoulder. I just wanted you closer to me. I'm kind of facing out the camera. I want the seal in the back.
Okay, I'll just, oh, of course.
So a little bit more. There we go. All right, good smile. All right. Did you want to just the front? Sure.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
That is. Okay, good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you. And congratulations to both of you. I'm excited for the year to come and the 4 years working with you, so the 2 years at least. But I appreciate all you guys both bring to this commission. We're gonna start with our work session this time. Work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to discussion, but there's generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meeting. First item is discussion of the formal agenda. So we have the agenda this evening. We'll have an opportunity to review that. Do we have any questions on what we're going to have on the agenda tonight? Nope. And then we also have the rolling agenda here that has meetings from January through the mid-March evening meeting. We have any questions on that?
I actually wonder,
Commissioner
Mr.
Thompson.
Chair, thank you, sir. I've been looking for when we'll have our board retreat, because I think it's essential that we have the opportunity to get together and really confer with each other and get into the things that we're talking about, and the things that we're not talking about, any stress points. I think it's, I just think it's essential for the well-being of our board and for the community that we do that. So I wonder when that will be on the agenda.
I think we've done a number of interviews with a convener. I don't know what the status of that is.
Yeah, Chair, Commissioner Thompson. Michelle Rios and I spoke from Blue Tiger Leadership, who's the consultant firm, and we had talked about, she's gonna be out of town for a little bit of January, and we had talked about as early in February as we could. So, and that's up to the board on how you want to proceed, but I think she's interested in engaging, and I think, you know, where we go with it is gonna be up to the
Yeah.
board. And
I'd like to talk to her too, because I know, you know, I'd like to hear what she heard, you know, what the results of those discussions, and I'd like to know what we'd really be striving to accomplish. So, thank you.
I was gonna talk about that a little bit too.
Okay.
Thank you for mentioning it, because I can pick one off on this.
You're gonna say more?
No, I think that's good. We will follow up.
Okay.
And try to-
Anything else on the agenda? Mr. Banks?
Point to this is January and February are extremely busy for me as a commissioner and as an individual and a mom, so
Yeah, we will work with everybody's schedule,
Okay.
trying to
Okay.
find a good time.
And schedule it as soon as we can.
Yeah,
I mean,
the legislative session too is also.
well, I mean, that's part of it, is that my calendar just fills up so fast. You know, it's really nice to have things out there.
Anything else on the rolling agenda?
One of the things that I'm sorry, Don and I haven't had a chance to meet very recently, but, as a member of the CREST board, it is imperative, I had to go through a mandatory training put on by the, ethics folks. And there's new legislation about open meetings that is profoundly different, than it has been. And so for those of us who say, well, you know, I've been doing this a long time, I don't need this, well, I did need it. And I think that maybe it would be a good idea for both us and the staff to go through, they have 2 to 3 hour webinars. And I think everybody really does need to go through that training, because the law is significantly updated, includes all kinds of school districts, for instance, which it never has before. And I think it's something that maybe we could put on our agendas, or
I'm only looking to Anthony, because I know that the Ethics Commission has been doing training, or has, and I know
Oh, yeah.
Anthony's also done it recently, or last night. So, for the fair. board.
Yeah.
So,
They do the meeting in the month virtually.
Oh, they do them
reached out to me, they.
almost
would be
every
willing
day.
to come down in person and we're scheduled to find out things for that. But just a reminder that every board member that we do that training on return, and I think the sooner the better, it's always Like I said, there's changes,
There-
and they do go very depth.
So, well, if the board would like, we can reach out to the ethics commission, I guess, and schedule a time for them to present that. So,
Right, they will come.
I would just add that one time I was talking to them and they said, well, we don't care what anybody else does in their training. We have to have our training,
Yeah.
which we want. And I said, okay, I want the training that will inform me and protect me. So I'd be grateful if you could do that.
Great. If we don't have anything else, we'll go ahead to the,
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I just have one other thing. I think it would be very useful for us to have, the Oregon Employment Department economist, who actually lives here in Astoria, and is the one who's assigned, they assign them regionally throughout the state. I receive, his written presentations always at, workforce training sessions as well. And, I think it would be really nice if he could come to us, maybe quarterly, and actually have a place on our agenda to give us an economic update. He's very, very knowledgeable and, really understands, the entirety. To tell you the truth, I was a little appalled that every year we get a report on the timber industry, as if it's the only sector in town. And, so I think that having, information from our fishers and farmers is really, really useful. And he travels. And I talked to him about this, and he said that quarterly would be very easy for him to do, to come and give us kind of the latest numbers.
Right.
And is very willing to do it. So,
I'd support that because I think as the governing body that's looking outside in order to supervise the managers, supervising what's going on inside, if we're tuned into that outside world and our place in it, that the better informed we are. And does he cover the whole coast?
no, he covered the 5-county area that the workforce board counts. It's Columbia, Clatsop, Tillamook, Lincoln, and Benton.
They make the population.
Which kind of,
Well, and the other thing is, I got an email from John Hillis, who's been trying to get to get on board with the housing stuff that relates to being a HUD recreation county, because we're so impacted by tourism. And because he's from over the other side of the mountain, what is John, not Union, but it's, yeah, over there. Wallowa County, thank you. It covers more of the state of Oregon, and it again relates to the economy and whatever we're doing, so that we're trying to get leverage with the legislature and the governor. I assume that the broader the purview we have, and the more common interest we have, and the more support we have, the better. And tuned into economy, I think, is the way to go, because it's the issue. I mean,
yeah, and I do appreciate Amanda Repencheck and what she does for us as legislative affairs, and we get a lot of good information through Peter, through our county manager's office. So I do feel good that we are getting a lot of good information as we go through the process. And this is, a very important legislative session. CFM advocates, we're going to have regular updates with them, and they're going to be a voice for us down in Salem. So I'm pleased that we do have a strong team, and certainly willing to take on new sources of information that fits into everything else we're doing. Okay, anything else? We'll move on to the county manager update.
So this is kind of an unstructured time, so feel free to bring up other topics. I thought it would be nice to start the year with all of us here, new commissioner, to just kind of go through some of the things that are going on this spring, because there's a lot of things going on. And I'm going to touch on one of them, which is going to take a lot of staff time, and that's the 2025-26 budget process. The board will be having the budget policies presented to you on the fifteenth of the month, and that's really kind of what kicks off the budget process, even though staff is already working on it. As you remember through last budget process, one of the commitments staff had made was that we were going to use all the levers we have to make sure that the 25-26 budget was balanced in terms of current revenues and current expenditures. And so we do have a really healthy fund balance. It's about 34% right now. The goal is around 20%. So we do have much larger reserves than what the board policy dictates. But the reason is because there's a lot of uncertainty still. And one of those pieces of uncertainty is what may or may not happen with the timber revenues and the revenue replacement options that have been discussed as part of a small table group that Commissioner Banks has been a part of. And we still don't have clarity on what that path is. And just to go back a little bit is based on the estimates and the most recent estimates we've seen, you know, it would be about a $3 million hit to the county if it was fully executed. And about 1.8 million of that is general fund. So, you know, that's about 6% of our general fund. And the general fund is important, Commissioner, just because that's the discretionary part of our budget. That's the part that the budget committee and the board really have total discretion over. 50% of that right now is funding public safety and justice. So when we lose general fund resources, it does impact some of the most vital parts of our organization. So what we've been doing just real quickly is we are setting up a path doing what I had shared last time, which was we are going to be eliminating some vacant positions. We are keeping vacant positions open longer. We are reducing some other expenditures within the organization, and we're going to be looking at these additional revenues through the TLT ordinance that will be coming to your board first reading on the 15th also, not on the 22nd. And so I'm just sharing that, you know, part of what the county has to evolve to is that every county decides what you're going to subsidize. So there's general fund services, and it's just general fund dollars going into general fund services, but oftentimes we also subsidize other services that really should be paying for themselves, but we subsidize them partly because you can. But we're getting to the point where those subsidies, we have to really look at them, because if we don't deal with the subsidy, we're going to have to look at reducing expenditures more. And again, 50% of that is in public safety and justice. And so part of what we've been focusing on, we did that with the restaurant license fees, wasn't executed perfectly, but part of that was to increase the fees so that the county's not subsidizing them. We have the same issue that's on the agenda item this evening for the STRs. We have the same issue with the transient lodging tax. And there's a really long staff report, sorry, that'll be coming out in the packet for the 22nd, but we spend a lot of time talking about some of the equity issues, and tax equity is going to be important as we move forward. And so those that are benefiting are going to have to be asked to pay part or more of the part of what they're actually putting pressure on the system. Just as an example, you know, roughly 30% of the folks that go through the criminal justice system are not from Clatsop County. But when you look at the burden that they're paying just in the jail, just as one cost center, it's about 10%. And so the reality is property taxpayers are subsidizing. We have a very jail. We have to staff a jail. A lot of folks that are in the jail are non-residents. And that's a very unique, the amount is very unique to a county that sees our population surge from 40,000 to 120,000. When you have 120,000 people, you're going to be interacting with them, and fire would say the same thing. And part of our goal with the transient lodging tax legislation that we're trying to push is to get the fire agencies also some kind of reprieve through additional funding so that they can respond to the same. So I'm just giving you kind of a little preview of what the budget's gonna look like. There is gonna be fewer FTE because there are gonna be some elimination of vacancies. There's gonna be some other reductions that are gonna have to be made, but we are counting on the fact that TLT revenue grows at some level. If we get what we need from the legislature, then the rate increases at the local level would be much smaller, if not eliminated. But until we figure out what the legislature's gonna do, we can't wait. And the only decision we can make, that the board can make, is the TLT, the local TLT rate. And so, I mean, I have confidence that you're gonna get a budget that's balanced current revenue to current expenditures. There is, a cost to that, which there are some positions that we won't be filling. But I think we just have these big revenue issues that are gonna have to be resolved one way or the other. Property taxes aren't gonna fund the services of a community of 120,000. And so we're gonna have to figure that out, and the best way that we can control is TLT. The good thing about the legislation, as we've talked about before, is that there is a coalition now that includes LOC. I mean, public agencies support this, but it's still gonna be a steep climb with the legislature. And so, so there's a lot that's going into the budget right now, but I just wanted to reassure you that we will live to what we had committed to, and provide that current revenue, current expense balance with the budget. But we still will be sitting on 34% fund balance at the end of that, so, which is a good place to be. But hopefully there'll be something that comes out of the small table group. Maybe.
I would just say, first of all, this isn't as a surprise. We've talked about this the last 2-3 years in our budget committee meetings, and certainly this is a big, thanks to Monica Peel for her budgeting. I mean, that's why we're in this 34% reserve position. But we knew that this was coming, and certainly as we look forward, there are going to be some very tough decisions that need to be made. But I appreciate we've been proactive with the TLT. We've been looking for flexibility in that for some time, working closely with CFM advocates. Hopefully there will be something that comes of that, but it's going to require really good teamwork from this group and from the entire team, the entire staff.
I mean, part of the strategy there is if the big lift that OLC is trying to make, which is to provide flexibility to all counties and all cities, if that becomes too big, there's a smaller version of this, which is what our legislative concept was to begin with, which is the 4 counties that are most impacted per capita get the flexibility. And that would be Tillamook, Lincoln, Clatsop, and Curry. So, but LOC is going to run with the larger first, and we'll see. And we're trying to support that, but
and we're talking fire too. We're talking about traffic accidents, correct?
We're talking traffic accidents, just all the emergency responses, but traffic accidents are one of the biggest workloads for these fire agencies. And as all of you know, our fire agencies are primarily volunteer. And, your board helped the fire agencies a lot this last year with the 2, contributions from the ARPA dollars. They're all very appreciative. I mean, the sum of those is larger than some of their annual budgets. So, so they're all very appreciative of what the county's doing. They're appreciative of the county's leadership, your leadership on trying to push the TLT flexibility forward, because part of what, we can share some of our flexibility with them and help them if we have the flexibility. But if we don't have the flexibility, then there's no more resources to help that with. And, we have some majorly impacted agencies because of tourism. I mean, Hamlet, Cannon Beach, Napa, I mean, you just go all the way up and down, Highway 30, 101, 26, and you pretty much touch them all, so.
I have a question if you're ready.
Oh, sure.
Man. So I really appreciate having this, clear, in my mind at least. We got some money from the federal delegation for traffic safety efforts. Do we have progress on that? Is there any hope that if we have a demonstration project that we can then go look for additional funding to maintain whatever service improvements?
So yes, the traffic safety grant will be having a consultant join us soon to go through the traffic safety process. And that's a countywide process. And so it'll include all the different parties, including ODOT. And then based on the traffic safety analysis, there will be projects, areas that are the biggest concern. And then that makes us eligible for funding sources for those projects. I think there's a larger issue with just state transportation funding. And, you know, and that's its own thing. The good news is that even though timber revenue loss is going to impact our road district at the tune of about $600,000. So that's in addition to the 1.8. So right now, the county road system, you know, because of the leadership of your board and the contributions of our public works department, you know, our roads are being maintained at a high level. We're improving with culverts replacements, bridge replacements, but there's not enough money in the transportation portal to fund all the needs. You know, we know there's some major issues down with flooding down in South County, and down in Commissioner Thompson's district. And that's, you know, that's part of the conversations that are ongoing, is what some of the solutions are there, but there's many others. And so getting the traffic safety plan done will be an important part, but there just needs to be more federal, state resources, and then everybody's trying to figure out how to align those resources. And so we'll see. The legislative session will be interesting on that front too.
Well, if I could then, I wasn't at the last meeting in December because I was at the Joint Committee on Transportation testifying with Brett Bowman in a panel for the Jurisdictional Transfer Advisory Committee. So I've been active with former Rep. Senator Fan. He's very interested and responsive to our safety needs in your district, all of our districts. You're now doing Colpack and Northwest Act. So that's another avenue to make our needs and our impact felt. But all I'm saying is that I've been directly testifying in front of that Joint Transportation Committee as part of other kinds of groups, the AOC and others. So however, Amanda, I don't know how you integrate all of this, but there are a lot of inputs into this. It kind of looks like the ODOT funding diagram, which is really, it looks like a braided river in Alaska, if you're familiar with it. So how do we impact service level on the ground? And when you say we're going to have budget cuts, I think we know that means something, but to the extent, as soon as you're able to let us know what that will mean in terms of delayed services or eliminated services or reduced services.
It won't mean that. Well, I mean, what will mean is that there will be a burden on other staff members to basically get the workload done. It doesn't necessarily mean that there will be a reduction in services. We're not at that point with the reductions yet. But it is going to mean that there's going to be positions that we had staff in those, you know, participating in the work of the county, and we're still going to get the work done, but it's going to be all hands, basically. You have your kind of preferred staffing level, and then you have your real staffing level. And so we're not going to be at the preferred for at least a while. And what I will say though is, I mean, if we get what we need from the TLT And if we had a little legislative flexibility, that's gonna go a long ways in creating the financial stability that we need. But we still need the state to help with the revenue replacement for the HCG. That's gonna be key for our long-term stability, because it's the same issues that we are providing services to a much larger community. And again, mostly in public safety, but that's 50% of our general fund. And so for public safety to grow to meeting the needs of 120,000 takes resources away from meeting all the other general fund needs of the organization. And so that's kind of what the litmus test is right now is there a way that we can serve the 120 when it comes to the pressures being placed on us by tourism? And again, we support tourism. We just have to figure out how to provide the services, the requisite services that they need. And how do we make sure we still have volunteer firefighters and people who want to actually work here because they feel strained. I mean, every fire district is feeling immense strain right now. So there's a lot that's going to go into this question. The short reductions aren't going to create, it's the long-term reductions if we can't find solutions that I'm more concerned about.
So how do we offset those impacts without burdening our taxpayers and residents?
Yeah,
The banks.
I just wanted to follow up when county manager is talking about the $3 million impact to the county.
that's just us too.
That's just us. Those fire districts that we're discussing, they are also being impacted at the same level. Obviously, their budgets are smaller than our budget, but it's the same amount of impact is occurring to them. And so, as we're moving forward into the 2025, season, it's just always remembering that although what we talk about here is the impact to us directly and to our staff directly, those impacts are being felt in every agency that was receiving timber dollars. And there's that list is extremely long.
And just as a little background, the total amount for the 35% reduction, which was the last number that the state gave us, was $8 million total for the county.
Yeah.
Which includes schools. And the schools is a big portion.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we have two school districts that don't fall in with the equalization funding from the state. And so, it's just, it is what it is. And, conversations, there has been no resolution for that. Despite efforts at a multi-county level and efforts at the governor's office. I will say I'm very proud of our commission and our fiscal responsibility that we have had over the last 4 years while we're watching this come down the pipe at us, because we are in a better position, although we are the greatest impact. Like our county is receiving the greatest impact in the entire state. Because of our responsibility with our funding, we are sitting in a better position than other counties. And so it's just due to the leadership and to our county manager and encouraging us to have foresight. So.
And one thing I will mention real quick about the budget, then we can move on, is that one of the things that we're also doing is, as part of the budget policies, there's a resource reduction strategy, and one of the parts of the resource reduction strategy that was number one on the list. So if you go through a number of different things, the first thing is you look at what you're funding outside of the organization. And so I had sent a note, I think it was part of a Friday update, about the HSAC $30,000 contribution. One of my recommendations is that we not do that now. If we get to a financial position where we can, then that's great. But we're looking at funding the fundamentals of the organization, and that is something that is it's a subvention out of the organization. Still important, but we're at a place where we're not filling vacancies. I'd like us to have your consent that we can not do that, and we revisit it if we get into a stronger fiscal position.
I would agree with that.
This legislative session, hopefully there's good news.
The
Commissioner,
Can I add that I hope that in the conversations about our fire districts, that the whole medics issue is a very important financial
All first responders.
part of that. So
Yeah.
it's, you know.
It is, yeah,
because-
that is part of that, and the whole ambulance side of it.
Because
Yeah.
that's something that, you know, it's hard statistically it's one thing, I mean, the sheriff. The data now is so much better than it has been about who's doing what to whom in terms of our visitors. But medics is a big part of that too. It's emergency, medical assistance that has to do with traffic impacts. And also with drunk drivers and with, you know, problems in bars and others. So, I hope that's all.
And the cost of housing. I mean, there was a report and they were, and I was reading, you know. Over $700,000. This time, so. When we look at how do we respond, it's growing revenue, but in order to grow revenue, people have to have a place to live, so. So it's all of these.
You have to work on many fronts.
Welcome aboard. We're so glad you're here to help us with these challenges. Well, you know what? May you live in interesting times. Thank you for coming.
And just to back what Commissioner Thompson was saying is that, you know, AV growth is one of things that rural counties in a disadvantageous position on, is that our kind of natural AV growth is 3.5% a year. And I've said this before, but if you go to other, you know, more urbanized counties that have a lot more industrial lands, a lot more, you know, industry, theirs are growing 6 to 9% a year. So their tax collection is growing 6 to 9%, which in many cases is above the inflation rate. We're already below
The inflation rate.
the inflation
Yeah.
rate. And so there's just a lot, you know, economic development is an important piece of this also, which is why, if I can transition to one of my other topics, I just want to talk a little bit about the WCT enterprise zone. There's been a lot of work on the enterprise zone with, between WCT and Hayek. I just want to let your board know, part of the conversations is that WCT was the corporation that was approved for the enterprise zone. The idea was they were going to lease the lift and the tarmac that the lift sits on, from Hayek. And so since they were going to be in control over the site, that they would be the recipient of the enterprise zone tax abatements or tax exemptions. And they would be responsible for generating the jobs. And there was a requirement of 72 jobs. They think they're going to generate a lot more than 72 jobs. But as this has kind of gone forward, there's been negotiations recently between Hayek and WCT about Hayek having the enterprise zone and WCT having a subcontract agreement with Hayek, with WCT still generating some of the jobs, but Hayek is responsible for the jobs. I'm only bringing this up because it's still active negotiations between the two. What we care about, what the state cares about is that the jobs are generated.
Mhm.
There was $20 million roughly that went into this boat lift. That was public money. And so we just want the jobs to be created. And so,
But we also have to provide housing.
well, housing is certainly part of that, and that's gonna be one of the challenges, of course. In terms of the housing, we have a housing newsletter that goes out now, and as part of that, we've been talking about having an ongoing dashboard of the new housing units that are coming on, because there were goals that were set in the housing study. And so, and there's a lot of housing being developed on the private side and some in the public side. But having an ongoing dashboard so your board can see what the goal was, where we are, how many units have come on in this 6 months or that 6 months, what the totals are, what type of housing. Because there is a lot of good things happening, but we don't always have a lot of visibility on the actual number of the units that are coming on. So staff is working on that. The other thing is the North Coast Business Park. I just always wanna kind of talk about this because it's gonna come. February 14th.
Valentine's Day.
Birthday.
My birthday.
Oh, and your birthday. So,
Right.
that's gonna be
Let's have a
huge.
signing party, please.
Yeah, that's gonna be huge.
Cake, please.
So,
No case.
and
Just
that,
for the business part.
Okay, I'm all right.
There
with
we go.
that.
and that
It's a
ties,
public service thing.
that ties back to the conversation just now about AV growth. Eventually, depending on what the timelines are, what the investment is, Warrenton and the county are gonna, and the school district are gonna benefit from AV growth, and that's gonna be huge, for everybody. I keep going, or I can stop at any time.
Well, in regards to housing, I was curious if we can have an analysis of the ADUs and how that new legislation possibly has started to impact our community, or if it's not impacting it at all in a positive fashion, like is anybody taking advantage of it? or
Yeah,
not?
I think time is probably what we need to see if it does.
Okay.
It's just the development.
Takes a while.
Okay.
Yeah, I just,
Yeah,
in addition to the conversation regarding, apartment complexes going up in Warrenton and in Astoria, if we can see
Yeah.
if the new legislation has had any impact for us in the next 4 years.
so if I could talk about Archie.
I was hoping.
So as I have communicated with the board, the county was, asked by, Bob Bowman from the community club, to have some conversations about what it might look like if the Arch Cape community started discussing the development of a feasibility study for incorporation. As you know, this is a community that is distinct in its own right. There's been some ongoing challenges, some perceived, some real maybe, about the relationship with the county. Counties are big muscle movement entities. We don't have city types of services. We just provide county level planning, county level services. And Arch Cape obviously wants something different than what the county is giving them. And so they came and said that they would like to have an incorporation study done. I've been through this a couple of times. Usually the incorporation studies are done by the community that is interested in incorporation, not by the county. And the reason being is that they have to make some really seminal decisions about what the articulation of that governance model might be. And it's a very unique discussion. And so when I have spoken to Bob, I have said that the county certainly wants to provide technical support to their effort, and the board may consider providing some financial resources to it. I think this is probably a once in a generation opportunity to at least get the information on the table and make a viable decision. If they choose not to do it, then, okay, we're gonna continue to behave like a county. They may not be always satisfied with the county in those ways, and that's not a judgment. That's just, we are at odds between what a county does and the city does. Or they could incorporate, and if that happens, then they get to have manifest destiny through their own charter and their own governing body. And so I had reached out to Eco Northwest, not on behalf of the county, but to see if they would be interested in working with the community club. There's a meeting between the community club and Eco Northwest tomorrow morning, which I'm going to sit in on just to talk about kind of what the potential scope is. I've offered county staff, meaning our GIS staff, the sheriff's office, public works, assessment, taxation, county manager's office, to all be helped on technical assistance, because we have the data that would help them make some of the decisions. but that they really are gonna have to do this themselves. There may be an arrangement where the county provides kind of some fiscal agency, because this is a community club, they don't have a lot of capacity. But once they figure out what the scope might be, and there's some number attached to it, I will come back to your board and just have this conversation again about kind of where they are, what that number is, the board's appetite to support that effort financially. Again, just to reiterate, if we could get a solid feasibility study done and they can make a decision, I think it will help Commissioner Thompson. Certainly, I think it'll help generations of other governing board members, so.
Well, can I just say, cause look, they get to be their own manifest destiny. The time and money we save is everybody's benefit. It's really everybody.
It'll be a game changer in a lot of levels.
All please.
I just hesitate on dedicating public taxpayer dollars to a very small entity in our community. And I appreciate the offer of our staff services and of our information and so on and so forth, because I feel like that is, an appropriate help. But to fork over actual funding to subsidize a feasibility study, it really would depend on how much does that cost, because we are looking at pulling back on subsidizing other things for other larger groups of people that have been greatly impacted in the past. And so I'm really hesitant to give such a small group of people potentially a large amount of money.
And I think county manager, he'll come back to us.
Yeah.
whatever that looks like, but I'm really encouraged that they're taking this step.
Yeah.
It's certainly one thing that this has lacked is any data-driven decision-making. This has been about emotion, this is about other things. Oh, we've talked about it in the past, we don't want to do it.
And
You know,
there's just a lot of.
This is actually a willingness to actually look at the facts. And by the conclusion of this, hopefully, it'll be clear what the best course of action
It'll be
is.
weighing the cost versus the.
Yeah, one of the things I would say, Commissioner, is that I agree. Certainly we're not looking for more things to spend money on. But I think there is a return on investment with this one, because they consume a lot of staff time. And again, I'm not saying that in a negative way, but it takes a lot of staff time. And that we're talking general fund staff time. So I think that there will be that maybe price point that the board can say that makes a lot of sense. And I have said that there's, that there is limits. We're not, and this is not a huge, this is way smaller than like the past. When it went full amount, when you have a community of thousands, this is a community of a couple hundred. So. Well, I can keep going, but we're almost running out of time. So, I will say that there's an upcoming strategic plan conversation that we'd like to have with the board. We don't gonna have it real structured. We just want to give the board time to just talk. So that's gonna be, coming up. We did do a survey of our advisory boards and committees and some of our key stakeholders. So we'll share that information with you. We'll share what the previous versions are. A lot of the work that the county's doing, but we just want your board to have time to just talk. And I think it was interesting, real quickly. I went back to the 2012 strategic plan, and there was about 50 projects on it. I won't go through all 50 because there's still some of them that aren't done yet, but there was a number of projects that were on 2012 that we've been tackling recently. I'm just gonna go to the jail. That was completed in 2022. It was on the 2012 tsunami evacuation route planning. We did that. That was in 2012. Was on the plan. Westport Ferry access. It was on the plan in 2012. We're right now about ready to move that forward. Westport Park and Boat Launch, 2012. Got that done, I think it was about 2021. So, Ensign Lane Extension was on 2012, 2019, and roughly is when that got done. North Coast Business Park, I think it might have been on the 1962.
Yeah, I was it goes way back.
But it was on the 2012 and that's being done now. Comprehensive plan update was on in 2012. We got that done. Household hazardous waste facility was on in 2012. We got that done. I mean, I just want you to know that, I mean, part of doing the strategic planning is to have these things constantly visible so that we can, you know, keep focus. So that's all I need.
I agree.
Circling back to that.
A lot accomplished and a lot to be proud of, and I know that at any one time, there's 60 some projects in most of I mean, there's a lot going on with the county, so kudos to everybody, for all the hard work and let's go ahead and take, what, 7 minutes?
Sorry.
And have a little break before our regular meeting.
Thank you. Well, 'cause-
All right, we went back and we looked at all
Ready to go. The Board of Commissioners as the governing body of Clatsop County, all county service districts for which this body so acts, and as the Clatsop County Local Contract Review Board is now meeting in regular session. Now, before we have the flag salute, first item of business is the appointment of the chair and the vice chair for 2025. Section 4 of the county charter provides the following: at its first regular meeting of each year, the board shall designate a member as chair and another as vice chair. The chair shall preside over the meetings of the board and have a voice and a vote on all questions before it. The chair shall have authority to, 1, preserve order at board meetings, 2, enforce the rules, determine the order of board business, and 4, call special meetings and executive sessions as needed. And the vice chair shall assume the duties of the chair when absent. So I think we'll start by seeing if there's any motions for the chair position.
Could we have a discussion before we make motions, please?
I think we could just do the motions. We can certainly have discussions. Yep, during the discussion.
I move to nominate, Chair Aquila as chair for the 2025 year.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay. And is there a discussion?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've thought a lot about the role of the chair and the vice chair, and I've had a consternation. I mean, Chair Quilly, you and I have talked about this because I think we have very different ideas about what a strong organization looks like. And my concern is that if we kind of keep doing what we've always done and we don't talk about what is the role of a chair, what is the role of a commissioner, what is the role that we are serving here, and what's the best way to do that. And I mean, in addition to whatever time we take during a board retreat, I think this is a matter of great public interest, because this is my 11th year going into this now, and I've seen different kinds of chairs. I really appreciate the amiable demeanor and the smoothness with which you work through the agenda, but I also feel strongly that the charter doesn't give the chair all that much more power than the regular commissioners. And I've seen over time, the longer a chair holds the office, I think it's almost inevitable that that person begins to see themselves as more than a regular commissioner and really more than the charter contemplates. So I would urge us to think about, could we have the flexibility to have the conversations and then consider moving those roles around? Because I do think that's what a healthy organization does, is to share the power so that we have different perspectives on what leadership means and how best to conduct leadership. That's number one. Number two, I've seen what I think is unfortunate, and it doesn't matter who the chair is or what their political affiliation is or the fact that we are by charter nonpartisan. What I've seen is an unfortunate tendency to say, I've counted to 3. I have my 3 votes. I don't have to listen to those other people. And I think it's important that we honor everybody all over the county by listening to each commissioner and thinking about their part of the county, and then how do we all work together. Because I had dinner with someone last night from South County, and it's funny, because here we are, and we know what we do to take care of everybody all over the county. The perception is still, oh, those people up in Astoria, they just don't care about us. And I've heard people in Astoria say, ah, you South County people. I mean, so that's, I think, an unfortunate heritage that we've seen. I think it would be good not only to move the commissioner around in that seat, I think it would be good to move where we hold the meetings, because at certain times we have held the actual physical meeting of the board in other places around the county. I started talking about, and I talked about it for about 5 years, and then I finally gave up because it never happened, but I'm going to bring it up again. So I think it's important to move things around. I think it's important to consider fully what every commissioner has to say, and I think it's important that we move the physical meeting, the geography around. So that's what I had to say. Thank you for the
Commissioner
opportunity.
We have had this discussion in the past. I disagree. I think that I do listen and I do communicate with the rest of the board, and I think that's very important because I do want to have input from everyone. I mean, making a decision requires all of us to be on the same team, to contribute and do the best for the collective. That's certainly, that's what I've tried to hold up my entire time on the commission. I appreciate your points. Commissioner Banks.
I just wanted to circle back to what I've always felt the selection of a chair should be about, and it should be about trust and relationships. And the reason why every year I continue to nominate the same human is because he has developed a high level of trust amongst our staff, amongst myself, and I do feel he upholds the charter very well. And he is by far one of our individuals who has positive relationships with a lot of different people across our state, but also across our community. And when I am looking for somebody who is to run our meetings in a fair and equitable way, he has shown himself over the last 4 years to do that in a fair and equitable way, calmly, and with what I would say just a measure of grace and so that is why I continue to place my trust in him to continue to run these meetings and sit with staff probably at a higher level than other commissioners, and so that's where I am at, is my nomination is because I trust the nominee, and in that I trust that he will continue to run a fair and equitable meeting and treat us all with respect.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Banks. Any other discussion? Commissioner Kukua?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm very new to this, and I definitely won't be able to speak quite as much as Commissioner Bangs over there, but I spent the better part of my life as an adult getting to know people and understanding how people are. And in the short duration that I have known you as chair, I can say that I've enjoyed every conversation I've had with you. You've treated me with the utmost dignity, respect. I've never heard you speak ill of anybody. I know in the community from people that I've talked to that they also think the same, and I've never heard anything bad come of that. And if that were to change, I would be amiable to having a discussion about a different chair at some point, but at this point, that's why I make my decision. Even though I am new, I'm going based on my ability to read people, and so I stick by what I voted for.
Thank you, Commissioner Wakula. Commissioner Webb?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I have noticed in dealing with a lot of other counties through my work with AOC, there are a number of counties, Tillamook, for instance, they rotate the chair every year. I think there's a richness to that, because that way everybody gets a chance to kind of know what the seat feels like and looks like, and et cetera. So I think there are definitely, good reasons to rotate the chair. But I too agree that, our present chair has a lot of credibility in the community and a lot of, how many times have I said, you run a great meeting? But I think that I'm not sure that we've ever really had a lot of discussions about what the role of the chair is. One of the things and since I've been on the board for a couple of sessions, I think we had a difficult time, before this present board, about the lack of leadership on the part of the chair, that I think was a very difficult time, And, so there is there's an enormous trust issue, which I think this chair has certainly held to account. But I do worry, that it just becomes a perpetual thing, and that other, perhaps newer members of the board don't experience. Maybe if we rotated the vice chair or something like that, I think it might just look better to our citizens, to say, yes, it's an inclusive body.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Webb. Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, Commissioner.
I would just like to say I appreciate the idea of, basically circling around the chair position. I will say that, in my experience, having somebody who's novice at what they do and experienced shaves a lot of time off of training. The downside to me stepping into this role is that I'm behind the 8 ball, and I have no problem being honest about that. And that sets you guys back, and I'm sorry for that, because we lost a great leader that stepped down, who I ended up replacing, and I'll do my best to carry momentum, but there is going to be a huge learning curve with that, and I would assume the same for anybody that would step into that role, which is a disservice to the community and to the board itself. So I think that if you find somebody who's competent and efficient at what they do, there's no sense in losing that efficiency momentum to gain experience across things when we have the ability to have those discussions and bring in multiple points of view. And so that's my opinion.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Waku. I think you sell yourself short, though. I know you've been doing your homework since you've been commissioner-elect over the last couple of months, learning as much as you can. I know that you've sat down with our county manager to get oriented, and also have been doing your research on items that are on the agenda. So I don't think it's going to be that steep a learning curve after all.
If I may.
Mr. Thompson, yes.
Thank you. One of the things that we have in Clatsop County that's very unusual, it's not completely unique because Hood River also has volunteer commissioners by charter. We have volunteer commissioners. So we have 3 commissioners who have other jobs. 2 of them have other full-time jobs. So if we're looking at who is experienced running a meeting or here, I would say this is my 11th year here. I'm chair in many other organizations. I've been the vice chair here. It's not a lack of experience. There wouldn't be a loss of efficiency. And I would say, even more important, I don't have another full-time job. I don't have a family with children at home. So I have the time to devote to doing the job, and that's why I spend all day long every day going other places devoted to doing public service for Clatsop County. So I think that also is a factor that could be weighed and could enter into it, with all respect for the effort and the productivity and the devotion to public service, because I think we are all 5 of us devoted to our vision of public service as we see it. And the challenge comes in having the time and the focus, as well as the experience, to evaluate the role of the chair, the role of the vice chair, the role of commissioners, then the role of the governing body. Because I think in Clatsop County, it may have gotten lost sometimes that volunteer commissioners are still the members of the governing body of the county. That's state law. The charter can't change that. It doesn't talk much about it. We are still the governing body because we have the authority and the responsibility to govern. We lose our jobs if the voters, who are our bosses, our direct bosses, don't approve of the job we do. That's why staff is subordinate to us. We have an excellent county manager who does an excellent job supervising staff, but we are the governing body, and the time and effort and the skill, the wisdom that we bring to that plays an important role in our success and the county's success and the staff's success, the well-being of the people in the place. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. And I do think we have 3 full-time, people that work. So, are we ready for a vote?
Yes.
Okay. How do we want to do this? All those in How
You
do I
want to
do
do a
this?
roll call vote?
Yeah.
No? Okay.
We'll go ahead and have Teresa do the, clerk of the board, can you do a roll call vote?
You, wait a minute. I want procedure here. We have a motion,
And a second,
Mm-hmm.
a second.
and we're,
Can we be open to others?
well, I think we should do the vote, and then if we're not in majority, then we could take another nomination. And that's, I
Can't do
think
anything
what
else.
we-
There's a
County
motion on
council?
it.
County council?
Yeah, that's correct. That's how I would proceed, because if there's a majority, then it's kind of a moot point to have other nominations.
Okay, so clerk of the board?
Okay.
Vice Chair Banks.
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Nay.
Commissioner Wakuha?
Aye.
Commissioner Webb?
Aye.
Chair Quila?
Aye. Okay, thank you very much. I really do appreciate the faith you guys have in me, and, you know, I'll continue to execute the role of the board chair.
Thank you.
Next is the appointment of the vice chair for 2025. And I would nominate, Commissioner Banks for the vice chair position. She has done a fantastic job. I really appreciate her leadership on, the Department of Forest Lands, or in working with the Department of Forestry. She has really been, a good voice for us and an advocate for this community. I think she should continue on as the vice chair. My nomination. So that's my motion. Do we have a second?
I second that.
Okay, do we have any discussion?
I would just say everything I said before, again, with respect for the folks filling out the job and their devotion to that job. I do think it's the sign of a healthy organization to rotate the leadership and to share those roles. Thank you.
Commissioner Thompson? Any other discussion? Clerk of the board, can we have a roll call vote? Motion second for Commissioner Banks?
Chair Quila?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Nay.
Commissioner Wakuha?
Aye.
Commissioner Webb?
Nay.
Me.
Commissioner
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Right,
3-2.
congratulations, Commissioner Banks. And now we will move into the flag salute. So all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, clerk of the board, can we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Chair Quila?
Aye.
Vice Chair Banks?
Here.
Commissioner Wakuha?
Here.
Commissioner Webb?
Here.
And Commissioner Thompson?
Here.
All right, we had a work session prior to this regular meeting, and we did review the agenda. Do we have any questions, or are we ready for a motion?
I move to approve.
Second?
Moved and second to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Business from the public. This is an opportunity for anyone to give a 2-minute presentation about any item on the agenda except for public hearings or any topic of county concern that is not on the agenda. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No, there are not.
Okay. And I don't see any cards. Does anyone here would like to participate in public comment in person? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public comment and move on to the consent calendar. I think we had about 5 items on the consent calendar there, the meeting minutes, October, November. Do we have any questions on any item on the consent calendar, or are we ready for a motion?
I move to approve.
I second?
Moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar as presented. All those in favor signify with an aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Commissioner reports. We'll start with Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, sir. I'm gonna start with the hard thing first, right? I was talking to commissioners around the state to double check on my capacity and any concerns that anybody had about my capacity. They said, no, you're firing on all cylinders, but you ask hard questions, and for some people that makes you a pain in the anatomy, because some people would rather be directed by others, but that's not you, so that's my takeaway on my survey. Here's another hard thing. I don't know if you can see this. This is the agri-stress hotline. Because it turns out that the rates of suicide among ranchers and farmers are extraordinarily high. And there has been an effort to address mental health issues for those folks who are, generally speaking, don't think of that as a default position and may end up sinking under the stress. So I'd just like to mention that for the record in case anybody knows a farmer or rancher or loves a farmer or rancher. And I bet if somebody were a forestry worker that they could also have access to this and could get the help they need. So we would say that we are a beloved community and take advantage of that. And the other thing is,
Can I add something to that?
sure,
Commissioner Thompson and I attended the AOC conference this year and were introduced to this new initiative. And it is being implemented locally by our extension folks. And the extension agent for small farms, which I tried very, very hard to get that position filled the first couple of years I was on this board, and we got it filled, and so it is her responsibility. So it's also very local. There is a count, I think it's actually a statewide telephone number.
Yeah.
But we do have someone staffing that whole effort at our local extension office.
Yeah, we do. So we have local. For those of you who are ham radio geeks, this is for you. I got my 10-year certificate, which is on fancy paper from the American Radio Relay League. So I have been a ham radio operator 10 years now. And thanks to Terry Wilson and all those people who inspired the rest of us to get outside our comfort zone and carry on and pass the exam and have the authority to use that, because when things go amiss and cell phone towers are down, those ham radios are there. So get your license, because there's help for you to do that. And the third thing I'd like to talk about is Commissioner Webb, because when we were at the AOC annual conference, Commissioner Weber and I helped Clatsop County have a presence. And Commissioner Webb made our presence stunning. We were flooded with visitors because we haven't been there. I don't know if we've ever been there, but I've never seen us there. Other counties come and they bring their products, they bring their beer, they bring their food, they bring their lavender, they bring their fry bread, they bring all kinds of things. And Commissioner Webb made wonderful use of her connections in this community. So we had all kinds, I have medals, maybe I'll wear my medals next time, because Commissioner Webb made sure that everybody had medals from Clatsop County. She even had Goonies sweatshirts, which we didn't have a raffle because we didn't charge for it, but we had a drawing. And we had people longing for our Goonies shirts. And so now we have established that at the AOC annual conference, Clatsop County has a presence for the rest of the world. We are in a whole different level of public visibility and credibility, which I think you may remember I said we did a three-way commissioner exchange with the Deschutes County Commissioner, Wasco County Commissioners, and Clatsop County Commissioner, and had them visit us and we visited them. Now looking at the next one, I'm thinking that Clackamas County would be a good county to be part of a commissioner exchange so that we're in that metro area, and maybe we can all confer, because I'm open to suggestions about who the three-way would be. It was wonderful to have a three-way. I got a lovely thank you card from Commissioner Phil Brady from Wasco County, who said what he learned about Clatsop County was that
Fishing is hard work. Forestry is hard work. The farming here is hard work. And there are a lot of good people in Clatsop County working on these very difficult problems that we face and working hard in our industry. So, we are up and visible out in the world in a whole different way. Thanks, Commissioner Webb.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Banks?
Yes, had, meetings with Northwestern Senior Disability Services. They'll just kind of the average meeting. Nothing too important, to share there. We are coming up on the Natural Resources Dinner, which is probably one of the largest fundraisers for our school districts that have natural resources departments. And so if you haven't already purchased your ticket, I encourage you to do so. I think we only have 10 left. I am participating as a volunteer with Oregon Women in Timber for that. And my daughter will be there volunteering as a SFA member for Astoria. And I find it lovely now that we have a hotline for our agriculturists to call, a suicide hotline for our agriculturists to call. That's actually something that has been a part of schools for a very long time, especially in agriculture programs with teachers. Tess Hamby hosted recently a suicide awareness for her students, but also families of her students. And so I am excited to see that something has actually occurred at a state level, something that's just been kind of part of an agriculture culture is now getting more attention, and so that is appreciative. We canceled our childcare meeting. There were just a lot of folks out of the office for the holidays, and so our next upcoming meeting will be in February. There is no news from the Small Table Group, and there is no news from CFTLC. We were supposed to have a meeting prior to the holidays to discuss legislative concepts, but that since had been deferred to this January. I've yet to hear from Brandon Persinger on what our direction is going to be moving into the legislative session for CFTLC and FTLAC. Other than that, holidays were wonderful. I hope to see everybody at the Natural Resources Dinner. In the past, we've been able to provide over $20,000 to each program in our schools across the county. All of our schools across the county have received funding from this. And it's a huge appreciation dinner for our industry. Often our industry members are receiving their Operator of the Year awards at that same meeting. Hopefully we will be able to hear from the students like we did last year regarding their projects that they accomplished with the funding that they received. So it's a busy month, but a lot of good things are, and I am always appreciative when other commissioners are able to go to the AOC conference. Eugene is lovely, the hotel is lovely, and it's always an adventure down there in Eugene. And so I hope our new commissioner will join me this year down there, because it'll be a lot of fun, and we can maybe get you some free breakfast. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks. And the Natural Resources Dinner is such a fun event.
It really is.
Huge, too. I mean, last year it was sold out, and I don't know how many people there were there, 300 people at least.
We have 500 tickets, and
Yeah.
we only
I
have,
shot it by 200, but.
yeah.
It's a great event.
It's great.
And I know they're close to selling out again.
Yes. I think, so if you can't find a ticket, Lindsay Davis is the key.
Yeah, reach out to Lindsay. Commissioner Webb?
I think that since our last board meeting, I don't think I have a lot to report. The AOC conference this year, was, was focused mostly on the legislative session. And, so there were a lot of awfully good sessions, where we did a lot of insight, into what would work legislatively and what wouldn't. And, so we did a lot there. And since then, most of my spare time, has been, attending, those legislative meetings, getting ready for the session. So, that's been pretty much the focus, that and trying to get over pneumonia and a number of other issues. One of the things that I can add to Commissioner Thompson's, thank you very much for your kind words about our presence at AOC, at our big table. One of the things that I found particularly enjoyable, is that a lot of the other counties that were there, really emphasized their tourism industry, really, and we did to an extent, but we also took other things with us, like a presentation on what I'm still calling Electro. I don't know. Help me out. Right? They've been bought, and there's another company's name for it. But
JBT. Oh, Oshkosh.
Oshkosh.
B'gosh.
Yeah. And it was, and so we had a number of other, things at our table, and it was so much fun to get people's reaction when I could say to them, well, you know what our biggest manufacturing, practice in Clatsop County is. And people would say, well, no, what manufacturing? And I'd say, well, have you ever heard of an airplane tug? And begin to talk about the Electro office and their employees and their impact on the community. And they're also part of the ports, business development park, et cetera, et cetera. And it was really fun to take things with us that people don't know us. I mean, it's always wonderful, of course, to have, because Fort George gave us all kinds of fabulous treats. But, because people walk up and say, Fort George IPA, that's my favorite IPA. You know, that, of course, that always feels wonderful. But we also took with us a Fort George seltzer water made with hops, non-alcoholic, and it's wonderful. And that we sold out of. I mean, we could have used 4 more cases. I mean, people just went crazy. So it's just a lot of fun to take things with us. Next year, I hope we'll have a big CMH display. Because I was really sorry we didn't do it this year because of all the cool, neat things that are being built as a part of that complex.
Yeah.
And, so it's, anyway, there's a whole lot more to Clatsop County than the beach and the river and great beer and good food.
Now, were you two serving the beer, did I understand?
Yes, we were.
Okay.
And I can, it was a little tiny little plastic cup, like about this big, about a shot glass. And I spent the whole night. I mean, we ran out of, we gave it away.
Carding people?
No.
No.
They were mostly, you know, an AOC meeting, honey.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking about carding people. They're all old bears, like Commissioner Thompson and me. But it really was great, and I think that we're really gonna think a lot harder next time and earlier about, let's promote things that people don't know about us, you know, and hey, we're a diverse place, and so we're gonna work really hard at that.
No, that's great. Thank you, Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Wakua.
Well, I can keep this short and sweet. I have nothing to report. No, I'm excited to get, to dive in and get involved with the community. And, I've been talking with, Commissioner Toyoka, and so I think we have a direction. We just need to officiate it and, do some introductions. And he's gonna assist me in the transition over as we kind of segue and, liaisons, and look forward to it.
Well, welcome aboard. I really do appreciate you being active and trying to get up to speed, engaged, learning as much as you can, and it shows in, you know, the questions that you've been asking when we've got together a few times. So do appreciate that, and welcome aboard. Anxious to work with you, and congratulations once again. Thank you much.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Are you going to county college?
So I just got the email about it this week, and forwarded on, actually, we discussed it, and I didn't get an answer yet, so.
So it's gonna be November, right, of this?
No, it goes all year. It already started, actually.
Already started? Okay.
And their sessions start almost immediately. I recommend it highly.
Okay.
It's just, it gives you an education that you don't get anywhere else. And it gets you, in contact with AOC staff, which is really nice, so that you kind of know where to go, you know, for information. And it's a tremendous bonding experience with other county commissioners who are new. Kind of lasts forever. My county college class, we used to have a reunion every year at AOC. We have dinner together. And, so I recommend it highly.
If I could just weigh in on that, I can't emphasize it too highly, because it's a collaboration of the Association of Oregon Counties and Cooperative Extension. It gives you a legal and policy grounding in areas that are absolutely important, and not only AOC staff, but your colleagues all over the state, so that you have backup and perspective and support.
Really. Well, welcome aboard, Commissioner. I'm definitely anxious and eager to work with you. And also, I wanted to acknowledge a new title in the audience. Sheriff Matt Phillips is now Pilot Matt Phillips. This is brand new news, because this is Monday. And contrary to popular opinion, he isn't going to be shuttling everybody back and forth. Northwest. Although, as much as we'd love him to, but congratulations. I know that's a lot of hard work, and that's awesome. Quite an achievement. I did attend the NOAA meeting last month, and it, believe it or not, was the first year anniversary of the executive director, Andy Shaw. He's been here for 1 year already. And one of the things that was announced is the housing voucher program achieved HUD's high performer status for 2024. So that's a big deal. I mean, that's a significant turnaround from, you know, years previous, and that's quite an achievement and accomplishment, and that was something to be celebrated. Obviously, we talked a little bit about Owens Adair earlier. I think there are some issues with the parking, but that is moving forward. The COLPAC meeting, we did have some of the updates on projects that are going on, but also the FEMA buy-up was, again, a topic. And I do appreciate Sarah Lou Heath, who's the interim executive director. There was a 2-year audit that was completed in October, and a lot of things that came out of that just were housekeeping things, but they were things that needed to be done. And she dug into that and got a lot done in the last couple of months of the year, and was able to give a year-end financials that everybody was pleased and satisfied with. So appreciate what she's doing there. And then she did give me an onboarding session a couple of weeks ago, so that got me official and now up to speed on all the good things that COLPAC is doing. And I do want to thank our public works team. I mean, this has been a nasty stretch of weather for the last month, and they've been out doing a lot of hard work. And I know they were down on Ridge Road clearing trees and stuff around power lines and doing that entire, you know, Hammond area and Warrenton area. I mean, there's a lot of work that needs to be done all over the county, and we have one of the larger geographic counties in the state. So I really do appreciate their hard work. And I don't think I have anything else, so I'll go ahead and turn it over to our county manager.
Chair Creel, members of the board, since I spent so much time talking during the work session, I'll be super brief. But I did want to remind your board that after 41 years, Suzanne has retired as this assessment taxation director, and we will be celebrating her on January 24th at 5:00 p.m. at the Elks Ballroom. So if you're available, we'd love to have you celebrate with us. Also, we did this last year. It was actually a holiday potluck, which we didn't make it this year. So it's the after holiday potluck, and it's an around the world potluck, and we're having that with staff. I believe it's next Wednesday, between 12 and 2 at the fairgrounds. So
It's gonna be here, right?
oh, is it gonna be here? Okay, I have that information. So it's gonna be here in the Boynton, so. And I've said this, in a couple of notes to the board, that I am meeting with with the Corps of Engineers on Monday, and I'll let you know how that goes on a number of different topics, so that's all I have.
Well, good luck. And yeah, the potluck was a lot of fun last year, so I'm looking forward to it, next Wednesday. I'd encourage, my fellow to stop by. All of the foods from around the world, so I'll try to be working on my Finnish or Swedish delicacies to bring, but no, that's awesome. I'm glad you're doing it again. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the business agenda. So we have our first item, which is item number 9, short-term rental application fee revision, page 91. And Gail Hendrickson, our Community Development Director.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
So I'm here this evening to talk about a potential fee increase for our short-term rental permits, and the county manager brought this up earlier during your work session. Back in July and September last year, we had some discussions during other work sessions with your board, looking at the actual costs that the different county departments were incurring to administer and monitor the short-term rental permit. Currently, we charge $550 for a 2-year short-term rental permit. Our actual costs are approximately $1,373. So on your September 25th work session, the discussion and the direction given to staff was to bring forward a potential fee increase, raising that to $1,500 for a 2-year permit. And we would make some alterations on how that those funds are distributed, so that the other departments who are currently not compensated or who are undercompensated would then receive their fair share. So that is the item before you this evening. The fee increase, if it's approved, would represent an increase of $475 per year. If you average that out over 2 years, it would go from $275 every year for a $550 permit up to $475, or sorry, it would be an increase of $475. We've given you a breakout beginning on page 91 of your agenda package that looks at the different costs that each department is incurring. There's a breakdown of what we would then distribute that fee to each department. And then estimated based on 172 short-term rental permits, we would anticipate that over a 2-year period, that would be a total of $258,000 that we would bring in and no longer subsidize the short-term rental permits. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Gail. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Thank you. I appreciate receiving the cost breakdown. Again, we're using the phrase data-informed discussions. I think that's the way to go in every aspect. I wonder, the 24/7 complaint hotline, are you content with the current provider? Do you see any need for improvement in that service, or do you think it's meeting the needs that we have as a county to adequately, I'm not going to call it police, I'm going to call it supervise the activities that need to be regulated to maintain neighborhood livability?
So we evaluate the system every year. We do not get that many calls, to be honest with you. I think over the past 6 months, we've had about 3 or 4 calls to the hotline. We keep it because we know that, at least for the time being, we don't have staff here weekends, evenings, and holidays, which is when most of the complaints occur. So it is a relatively expensive system. for the amount of phone calls that it takes. And we can bring back data at some point if your board wants about how much it is basically per call. But we are also looking, for the coming fiscal year, we'll be looking at different companies just to see if there are other services that can be offered in different price structures that might be more beneficial to the county.
Thank you. Follow up. Then if we're able to get a better, more cost-effective service, is there any chance this is a bad question, right? But is there any chance that the cost of the permit could go down, or do we assume that inflation will offset any savings in this aspect of the program if they should occur?
At some point, inflation will offset any gains that we might have or break even that we have. I wouldn't expect that a new short-term rental permit or hotline is going to be significantly cheaper. I mean, it may drop $1,000 a year spread over 172 permits, so that would be $17.20 per permit or something like that, $170. So it would be very minimal. But again, we haven't analyzed that. But yes, I mean, everything is potentially open for your board's review.
Any other questions? Commissioner Wakua? Okay, Commissioner Webb first.
I didn't see in here, are we not using a service that, I have to use the word police, that polices advertisements for short-term rentals? Are we not using a service? I know they're out there, and I think that the other counties are using them. There are folks, who go online and mine them for people who are advertising an STR.
So we do not use a service for that, and the reason we don't is because we have an assessment and taxation staff that is at least as good, if not infinitely better, than what we would get for the price that we would pay. And they have been during the time that I've worked here, which is, I'm starting my 8th year. They do a wonderful job, and they're already employees of the county. So that's really a decision by the assessment and taxation director, and certainly, your board may want to ask that question to her at some point in the future.
That's very cool. That's very cool. Thank you. Thank you. This is a wonderful. I guess we have to start seeing things like this more often. Watching our budget. Thank you, Gail.
Commissioner Wakua? So for the sake of transparency, I would like to publicly disclose that I do manage an STR here in Clatsop County. And after speaking with county counsel, he has advised me that there's no conflict of interest as it's covered under the class exception under Oregon government ethics law. So with that, I've been through several permit processes with the county myself, and I've seen the pay increase occur. And initially coming into this role, my first inclination was to look at surrounding counties. And so with a quick search going into Tillamook, Newport, Lincoln City, and Portland, I found that they were all able to not only provide a permit for cheaper than the proposed $1,500 per 2 years, but the difference is that they also have, I think almost all of them have a tiered permit process instead of a blanket cost associated with each permit. And that's set up to specifically, have an impact on the STRs that are generating a significant amount more than the smaller STRs or the consistent STRs as opposed to the inconsistent STRs. And so, I just would like to see if there was due diligence in comparing how these other counties are able to all go through that application process cheaper, but has there also been investigation into possibly tiering that application process instead of holding everybody to the same thread? And
so when we did have discussions with the board back in July and September of last year, there were discussions about the potential of doing a tiered system. I think Commissioner Thompson may have raised that point. And then also at phasing the fee increase in over time. Staff did not do an inventory of jurisdictions to find out how they keep their permit costs or how they establish them. We looked at the cost, but not We didn't interview the jurisdictions to determine what they were doing that was enabling them to keep the cost down or have a lower cost than what we're proposing.
If I might, Chair Quilla.
Yeah.
I would say that just in my experience, there's a number of factors that are playing into the discrepancies between the different counties. One is the subsidy that we talked about earlier. There's just certain counties that have been subsidizing certain fees just over time, and that just becomes kind of hardwired in their fee schedule. The other is that, you know, we have focused on the code enforcement side, and if you look at the cost centers, code enforcement is one of the bigger cost centers. Not every county is providing the code enforcement resources for the SDRs that the county has. So some of the costs are derived by the service model that the board has asked for in terms of the code enforcement side. I think that Gail's correct that assessment and taxation has done a great job in making sure that those that are operating STRs are part of the system and are paying. But there's a number of factors that go into it, and it's service level and it's also just subsidy. And I think as time passes, I would venture to say that the subsidy issue is going to play itself out in some other counties too, because that while the challenges we have are related to some very specific revenue sources like timber, every county is under financial strain at some level. So I think that that's part of the value proposition that the board has had is that you've wanted to have responsiveness on the code enforcement side. And there's just a cost because we're distributing these costs over 172 STRs. It's very small. And so that's why the costs go up so much. But I think as to the tiers, you know, that's something that if the board wanted, we can certainly look at other options, but that's not what we have discussed with the board at this point, so.
And this has been a very, contentious issue. Obviously, we had a ballot measure a couple of years ago that was a very evenly voted on ballot measure that would have eliminated STRs. And I think this kind of shows that the public demands that we do code enforcement and make sure that we are being balanced in how we are managing STRs in the community. I do appreciate that we are doing that. Good neighbor policy and all of these things have been very good steps in the right direction. Commissioner Banks?
So I was concerned when we were first discussing this last summer, I think, about the negative impact it could have on small ownership, individual ownership, small family, situations, and talked about potentially, easing into it. But I guess my question circles back to, does the cost change for the county in consideration to the level of occupancy or the level of action, I don't know, that a short-term rental receives throughout the year? So do our costs increase if it is a short-term rental that receives a lot of traffic? Or is it stagnant and remain the same according to it's just a short-term rental?
For the most part, it's the same across the board, whether you are if you have an occupancy of 14 and you're rented 7 nights a week, 365 days a year. Where we tend to see the difference is when we have, as we've discussed in previous work sessions, some of these properties that receive repetitive complaints. We spend a lot of time with that, but then there's also just general questions that come up. So for example, as part of this evening's meeting, we have spent my time, county council's time, county manager's time, and county land use council time in addressing some questions that have arisen in comments. So those are all expenses that get associated with the short-term rental administration and monitoring. So it's more than just a specific short-term rental. There are also side and legal issues that come along with those that also need to be compensated or addressed.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wakua?
So just To be clear, I'm not asking that we subsidize the fee of operation associated with the STRs. But I would like to ensure that we're diligent to make sure that the resources that are being used are as effective as possible to minimize that. And as far as the county manager pointed out, if these costs are associated with code enforcement specifically, then theoretically, a smaller STR would utilize less resources for code enforcement. Somebody that has to enforce a 600 square foot apartment is going to be there a fraction of the time that a 3,000 square foot house in Cannon Beach is going to absorb. And so in my initial research with this, and I'm not suggesting that we need to follow one of these pathways, just that there are other ways to address this. Initially, there's one county that, for example, their STR fees are based off of rooms. 1 to 2 bedrooms is one fee, 3 to 5 bedrooms is another fee, and it jumps significantly. So, I saw another district that uses owner-occupied as the definition for the fee associated with it. If it is owner-occupied, it's significantly cheaper because those are probably going to be the ones generating less complaints, as opposed to the ones that are non-owner-occupied. Those have higher fees associated. And so I would just like to explore those options more in depth because I am new to this process, but I do bring a lot of experience in this process. And as somebody that lives here and I do rely on that income as well, it's important to me that when we are paying for those fees, that we're getting the biggest bang for the buck that we can. And I don't sit here and run a multi-million-dollar short-term rental throughout the year. So while you do note that it is only $450 a year more times every STR, that's a lot of money. And again, I'm not saying that we should not, that I want to subsidize it. I want to be held responsible for that. But I just want to make sure we do due diligence and looking at every possibility for navigating those fee increases.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other discussion? Okay. Are we ready for a motion?
Can I input thoughts?
Oh,
With more discussion?
more discussion.
More
Certainly.
discussion.
Commissioner Banks.
I'm just curious because I want to honor Commissioner Wakua's new position on our board and would like to give him the opportunity to explore this thought process. What is our time constraint on this uptick of permit fee?
So the only time frame would be at your board's discretion. This is not something that's required. It's something that we've discussed, but there is no time frame for it.
Because we've been actively involved in this conversation for numerous years, and we've ridden this roller coaster for numerous years. And he is bringing valuable discussion items. And it may be just giving him an opportunity to have one-on-one conversations with our staff to allow him to fully dive into this topic, mainly just because I do recognize his experience and I recognize his passion, and these are ideas that were unbeknownst to me up until this point. And so I'm wondering if the board would be interested in tabling this motion until next month and allow Commissioner Wakua to explore things further, because I agree, I don't want us subsidizing this program. We can't subsidize this program. And I think the entirety of the board agrees that we cannot subsidize this program. But I would like to give him the opportunity to explore his thoughts and his ideas with our staff. And then in conjunction, I think the only ask that I would have in the potential of tabling this topic is that we also discuss if an idea comes to fruition from his discussions with staff, that we attach staff time like the amount of staff time that it would take to implement, say, a tiered program. Because we are also discussing the fact that we are not filling positions, that we have less positions vacant, and that we have to be cognizant and aware that in the next, year, our entire story could change and legislation could come out and we could have funding. Or our story does not change, we don't have funding and we can't subsidize still, and then we also have a staff strapped for time. And so, but I do want to honor his passion and his experience and give him the opportunity to explore this topic further.
Any further discussion?
Yes.
Commissioner Webb?
We have been working on this for how many years?
Well, the fee increase is a recent thing since last year, but the short-term rental issue overall has
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
several years.
And I think that as a new commissioner, I think it's wonderful that a new commissioner wants to do investigation and more learning on if we, disrespect the work that the other four of us have been doing on this for a long time, I also believe that when a public official has a personal financial interest in something, they should recuse themselves from decision-making related to that because it is their own personal thing. I'm not prepared to sit here and have a new commissioner ask for things to be tabled for a while because I don't think it respects the time that the rest of us have spent deliberating on these issues. And I think it's insulting. I am insulted by that. And I think that it bodes very poorly for the way that this commission will function in the future if we have to reevaluate all of the work that we've put into making decisions for the last few years. And I'm not willing to do that.
Point of clarification,
I do
he
think-
didn't request for the table, I did, out of respect for our new commissioner. I just wanted a point of
Out
clarification.
of respect for the rest of us, I would like to suggest the motion. Are we open to the motion?
You're making a motion.
I'm prepared to.
Can we have some discussion, Commissioner Thompson, because I know that you were going to make a motion as well, Commissioner Bangs. I know we're going to actually table it. So Commissioner Thompson?
I'm going to sit here and listen to the discussion because I know both sides of it. I mean, I have grandma STRs, which is why I raised the issue. We don't have economy of scale in Clatsop County. So I've sat, with people who expect, I would say, big city services, and that's balanced against what's the actual cost and the cost of determining the cost. So the rate setting gets very complicated. And I'll tell you when we started working on this, it's when I came on this County Board of Commissioners, because I raised it, because it was a big deal for me. And I wanted to have neighborhood livability protected. I also understand there's a wide variation in the operators of short-term rentals. And that I have people, I'll show you the signs. They have signs up that say, don't take too many showers, don't flush that toilet too often, and you know what I mean? And make sure that you pick up your own and the neighbor's dog dirt. So there's a whole variation. Now, we're down this path. You're joining us. You have lived experience, which I really respect. And we've been working on this, the whole time, pretty much. We're almost at a point, we're at financial Fisher cut bait time, I would say, in terms of our budget. County Manager, do you have advice for us as we try and sift and balance this?
Is that a trick question or?
It's a tricky operation because we are trying to execute fairness and fiscal prudence for the staff and everybody, as well as honoring the time of the board that has existed. and welcoming our new person and wanting to take everybody into account. So it's a tricky proposition, but not a trick question.
County manager.
I'm not always slow to my response, but I think that at the end of the day, what's the most important for staff, so I'll just speak from staff's perspective, and it goes really back to the principles of how we manage the organization and the public's business. And we're getting down to some very different fundamentals in 2025 than we were in 1990 or anywhere else. And so the fundamentals are shifting on us. And I think it's a governance question and less of a fiscal question at this point. I'm gratified that the commissioners seem to be of the same perspective that subsidy is not going to be part of what we're going to continue to do in some of these non-general fund areas, meaning general fund subsidy into those services. I think then what it comes down to is just a governance issue of how your board wants to navigate those questions. There's no timeline from staff's perspective other than we're just going to spend a little bit more time coming up with some alternatives. And that's, from staff's view, that's certainly possible, and we can do that. I also respect that the board's view on the governance side is what is the real issue right now, and that's not an area that I will weigh in on. I'll just weigh in on the staff side, which is the principled side, that we are going to have to evolve into how we approach these subsidies issues. And that's going to be tough because there are some subsidies that have been baked in for a generation or more.
Yeah.
So.
And I just appreciate what the county managers, we did have this discussion in our work session. I think we're all united that we don't want to subsidize county services. I think that we don't also want to add a complexity to what the community development department and assessment and taxation, everybody does in order to create systems that might be unwieldy going forward and cost more money. So I think, so it makes sense to explore options. And to me, it would make sense to table it, have a little more time to kind of review, and then bring it back, just so we know that we've done our due diligence. I don't think that that is an issue. As far as declaring your position, you did that. You checked with county council. I appreciate that you did that on your own. And county council gave you the advice. You have every reason in the world to participate in a discussion and to actually vote on it. So, with that being said, do you want to make a motion?
I move we table it to February 12th, giving our newest commissioner the next month in order to explore these options. But I do want to make a quick question to Ms. Hendrickson. Is 30 days enough time to explore a potential tiered schedule?
Actually, if we could have a little bit more time, the agenda item is actually due 2 weeks before the meeting, so it would leave us with about 2 weeks to do that research.
Perfect. Okay, so how about we table it until,
February 26th.
February 26th?
Yep.
Does that feel like a substantial, enough time?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, do we have a second? Aye. Moved and seconded to table the short-term rental application fee revision agenda item until February 26th, 2025. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Roll call.
Commissioner Thompson?
Okay, I'm an aye.
Oh, Chair Quila,
Aye.
Vice Chair Banks,
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson,
Aye.
Commissioner Wakuha,
Aye.
Commissioner Webb.
Nay.
Thank you. Did we have anything else? Okay, next we'll move on to the public hearing. Ordinance 24-19, short-term rental caps, first public hearing, page 125. So this is the time set aside for a public hearing, and we will go ahead and have the first reading by title only, County Council.
This is ordinance number 24-19, in the matter of an ordinance amending Clatsop County Code Title V, Business Regulations, Chapter 5.12 and 5.24, to establish limits on the total number of short-term rentals permits that may be issued in specific geographical areas, revising standards and permitting procedures.
Thank you, County Council. All right, Gail?
Okay, thank you. So, we have made some changes to the ordinance at the advice of our land use council. You'll remember this from, the last couple of meetings, November and December. The major difference that was made at the advice of council was that we allowed all permits to be transferred. We had received some public comments, back at the end of 2024, and that was the guidance that we have been given. So those changes have been made. They are included on pages 137 and 145 of your agenda package. And I am aware that we received additional comments from the same law firm that sent us the comments at the end of last year. And we were in touch with our land use council again this afternoon, county council, county manager and I. And he has provided he has reiterated his guidance that he, in his legal opinion, that he does not believe that the first 2 points are relevant, that the takings issue has been addressed, many different court cases throughout the country, that it is not a takings if the board were to implement caps. With regard to the third item in the law, in the attorney's letter regarding the requested change to the language, that's really a policy change, and that's completely up to your board. I've reviewed it. I know county council has reviewed it. Our legal counsel reviewed it. Either way, or whichever way that your board would like to go on that third point, we don't have a concern. So that's really my report. It's basically the same ordinance you've seen, but with the transferability built back in. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Gail.
Yeah.
And Commissioner Banks.
So the Arch Cape, it's right there on my screen. So as per our work session, they're exploring other options for their community. So if they chose to incorporate, then that 10% would no longer apply to them any longer, and they would have to develop their own standard. Is that okay?
That's correct.
So I didn't want to circumvent their ability to seek anonymity from the county by placing an ordinance in front of their opportunity to incorporate.
Yeah, Chair Quillen, members of the board. One of the topics that will be discussed as part of the feasibility study will likely be STRs, and what they may or may not want to do with STRs, because they can regulate them as a city.
Yeah.
And they'll have the full range of governance options to do that. I think, so doing this would not impact what their flexibility is in the future. If they did incorporate, and that's an if, one of the biggest changes for us is those are no longer STRs that are regulated under the county code. And so obviously the metrics on our workload and costs per application is going to be different. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Any additional questions? Commissioner Wakula?
So more of just a general statement. Again, I refer to the class exception with this that I spoke with county council with, and it is with no intention of disrespect that I speak my mind and experience about something that we're having a conversation about. As Commissioner Banks mentioned, the idea that I presented previously had not been thought of or mentioned before, and so with that, I feel it's imperative that if points I'm mentioning haven't been noted, that we at least consider it. Now, personally speaking, with the cap idea, I'm against the cap for the most part, because I do feel that as a property owner, you go through the rigorous permit process. I've done it several times. And when you come out of that with the code enforcement being in place, you're offering a safe place for your patrons as well as your neighbors. Now, I am aware that there are parts of the county that have an issue with the percentage of STRs, but as a property owner, I feel that if you go through that permit process and you come out the other side clean, that you should be able to operate in the capacity that you want. The other thing that I would just like to note is there's an idea with STRs that it's just all short-term rentals all year long for people that are traveling here. The idea of freedom with your property, I think, is also important to note that if you're managing that STR you have that ability to stay there, put your friends and family up there throughout the year and have a place for them to stay. If that STR cap is passed on and we approve it, they are gonna be obligated for those that can't get an STR to now take on long-term renters, most likely, unless they just don't buy the property, for example. But a long-term rental, as we know, is going to prohibit that person from coming to the coast, from putting their family up, for the people that live here. One of my friends that was here earlier has a secondary property. We frequently put friends and family up in that property. That is something that would be limited in future STRs. And so I just want that to be known, that with the idea with CAP, you are limiting that freedom, and I think that's important to just remember. So that's all.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Thompson?
Well, you certainly changed the conversation, Commissioner. Welcome, welcome to the, well, no, because I've been listening to these kinds of conversations from my constituents and looking at how to balance what is the exercise of their property rights with the very real concerns about neighborhood livability. So we have people who come to the coast to behave badly, and they just do. People who want to come are going to create temporary urban density. I mean, we see it already. It will be even more. So we're in the business of balancing complex, competing rights or imperatives. And this is a considered discussion. You do change the composition of the discussion. I want to just note that and put it aside for a minute. I'm concerned, and I have every respect for our specialist legal counsel on this, because I've dealt with him since I was on the Planning Commission before I was a county commissioner. I just want to make sure that we are getting, I want to say, the highest quality advice, because what I'm aware of, we're in lawsuit territory. And going to LUBA is expensive, going to the Court of Appeals is expensive. If the county is concerned about costs, and we're looking at what we do and don't do, we may be looking at competing lawsuits. And that's something that I've had as a guiding principle, because I know lawyers are expensive for everybody. And I've always tried to do a middle route so that we chew away gradually at the areas of difference so that we can come to agreement and avoid lawyers and courtrooms. So we have lawyers involved. Let's try and avoid the courtrooms. The question is, how do we do that, and who's going to sue us? Because if we take what you say into account, then we have people on the other side who think, you know, I'm going to threaten to sue the county because I'm going to stop them. Chair Quila mentioned we had a referendum. It was bitterly contested. It created bad feeling among neighbors that continues to this day. It's a bad way. It's a bad way to proceed. So when I'm listening to this dialogue and looking at these data and remembering the thousands of hours, and yes, I did propose tiered, so please remember that. You're not the first. You're welcome and you're respected, but you are not, okay? So we get off on the right foot, because I don't know you from Adam's left docks until I walked in here tonight. So how do we balance these competing interests, keep the lawyers out of it insofar as possible, and definitely try and avoid litigation in courtrooms, because that costs Clatsop County taxpayers dearly. I don't want to do that. And I don't know where to go from there, but I want to sit with this for a minute and think about it. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions of staff? If not, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 24-19. Does any commissioner have a conflict of interest report? I think Commissioner Waku, I think you effectively stated that in your comments previous. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely?
No, there are not.
All right. Are there any members of the public signed up to speak in person?
No, there are not.
All right. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time on ordinance 23-19. We have a suggested motion, we continue the public hearing on this matter till January 22nd, 2025, and conduct the second reading at that time. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we conduct the first public hearing of ordinance 24-19 and continue the matter to the January 22, 2025 regular meeting.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded that we continue the public hearing on this matter to our January 22nd, 2025, and conduct the second reading on ordinance 23-19 at that time. All those in favor signify with an aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Gail. Now, that is our last item of business, and does anybody have anything for the good of the order? All right, if we don't, we'll